Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be discovering bishop and knight endgames. So if it's king versus king but you have the bishop and knight and you don't know how to finish the match off, here is how you can defeat your opponent in the next couple of moves. So we've already covered endgames with rooks and now we're going down to the minor pieces. So what we need to do is we need to get all of our pieces up to this king, but as you see, this king is on the dark square diagonal, but we have a light square bishop, which means we need to force this king over to the other side of the board, like this. So, from here we're going to push our king up, then we're going to get our bishop off to cut off the diagonals, then we're going to get our knight over here. So push our king up, king to e2, king to g8, king to e3, king to h8, king to e4, king to g8, king to f5, king to h8, king to f6, king to g8, so speeding things up. And now we have the king in. So the king is going to play repetition between these few squares. So h8 and g8. Now we have d3 with the bishop. And we have king back to h8, so cutting off the squares. So this bishop has this whole diagonal and the king is just going to keep repeating the moves. So now we have the bishop in, we have the king in, and all we need to do is get the knight. So the king's not going to keep marching down this way because this will be easier for white. That's why the king is repeating moves along these two squares. Now we have knight to f3, king to g8, knight to g5, knight to h8, and knight to f7 with check. Now king back to g8, bishop to e4, waiting move. Now the king has to move to f8, so now we're getting the black king all the way to this square. So the king can't go back because the knight now has this square and the king is defending the knight. So we have bishop to h7, so making sure this king can't come back to this square. That means the king has to go to e8, so over. King to e8. Now we have knight to e5. So from here, our knight is going to make a W pattern, a bit like this. Over, 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 and like this. And from here, we have king back to f8. Now knight to d7 with check, so now the W pattern is working. King to e8, so now when the king attacks our knight, we're going to move our king over at the same time. Because the knight has these squares, so the king can't go back, for now. Now we have king to e8, so the point is from here, these squares are occupied, and this is occupied by the knight, so the king has to move to d8 now. And now we mirror the king with king to d6, now the king can move back to e8, so that's the point, that's what we're trying to attempt. Now we have bishop to g6 with check, but the point is this cuts off the king from moving away because of the knight. So it gives the check, the king defends these squares, so now the king has to move to d8, it's the only option. So all black's moves are forced. Knight to c5, so now the W shape is working. King to c8, bishop to f7, so now we want to see the king if he moves to b8 or d8. So we are playing a waiting move in that position. So if the king moves to b8, this is going to be easier for us because we're going to get it into bishop to e6 and king to a8 and so on from there. But he's going to move to d8 because he wants to stay as far away as possible from this a8 square. As I mentioned earlier, we have a light square bishop, so we want to get into this. We want to get into this corner, so he's going to move as far away as possible. Knight to b7 with check, so the W shape. King to c8, and now king to c6, mirroring the king. King to b8, he can't escape because of the knight. And now we're going to play king to b6, so mirroring again. We need to remember the mirroring part. King to c8, now he can't escape much further because we have our knight defending this square. And he can't escape here because we're going to bring our bishop out, and he can't escape here because of the king. Bishop to e6 with check, so now he can't escape from this way, this way, this way. Now he has to move to b8, and we're going to get him in the corner. King to b8, knight to c5. So now we're working on the W shape, so we're moving it back so then we can get it to a6. So when we get the knight to a6, that's how we're going to trap him in the corner. Now we have king to a8. He's in the corner, but we have to play bishop to h3. You can put any move on this diagonal apart from going forward, but because you want to keep on this diagonal, we're playing the waiting move. No matter if you put it on h3, you can put it on g4, f5, it doesn't really matter, but h3, this is just showing an example of how it works. King to b8, and now the point is from here, we don't want this king to escape. That's why we play the waiting move along this diagonal. Knight to a6 with check. Now this square is covered by the king and the knight. This square is covered by the king, and so is this square, so he can't escape. And now we know this square is covered by the waiting move of the bishop, and now a8 is forced. And now the winning move is the bishop comes down to g2 and delivers checkmate like this. So going back, in the position you didn't have to play this move. You didn't have to move the bishop to all the way down to the square. You could have played something like bishop to f5, you could have moved down like that, and then it still would have worked. There's loads of other moves to play, and you could have moved all the way down as what we did. You could play like this, g4. Works the same way. You don't have to move h3. That was just an example of showing you how it worked. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video on checkmate with bishop and knight in the endgame. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and see you soon.